Yeah, good to talk to you, Ali.
All right, let's first of all talk about last week's performance. We saw a bearish trend for the JSE. Your thoughts on what is driving that? Because we've seen the city strengthen recently, so one would think that perhaps some foreign investor interest should take this market higher.
Well, Wale, overall market activity has been subdued in the last several weeks, and it's not difficult to see why. I mean, you have local investors and fund managers continue, as well as foreign investors, I must add. They continue to direct new investments into high-yielding government of Ghana securities, and also being an election year, you have lots of foreign portfolio managers, just like what happens in Nigeria, adopt a wait-and-see attitude, basically see how things pan out in the general elections, which will be held next week in exactly 11 days' time.
What's the buzz on the ground around those elections today, and to what extent would you think it's impacting investment activity? I imagine that with elections coming up, a lot of people will adopt a wait-and-see attitude to investment. Are we seeing that play out in Ghana right now?
Oh, yes, we are definitely seeing that, especially in the equity space. However, in the fixed income space, I guess, you have lots of foreign portfolio managers chasing yield. I mean, yields everywhere, in Europe, in the US are basically low. So you have a lot of foreign portfolio managers chasing yield. And even though there's a currency downside or the currency risk of investing in fixed income instruments in Ghana, you get a lot of these fund managers who are pretty bullish about Ghana and are willing to invest and take that currency risk.
Right. For the cedi, we've seen that stabilize a little bit after, if you like, a 4-week rally. The cedi has been gaining, really on the back of what you mentioned earlier, the foreign investor interest in the fixed income market. Your thoughts on where the cedi may go going into the rest of the year, considering where yields are? I mean, in Nigeria, for instance, we're seeing still strong interest, even though yields have come down about 300 to 400 basis points this year.
I mean, like you rightly said, generally the cedi appears to have stabilized. I mean, it's around 1 cedi 88 pesos to the dollar. And this has been due to the major efforts by the Bank of Ghana, mainly to restrict the use of the dollar by the general populace for daily transactions. Also, improved liquidity management by the central bank. And like you're saying, foreign inflows seeking to buy the high-yielding government securities have all positively impacted on the cedi. Also, dollar demand to pay for imports is being largely matched by dollar demand from the central bank as well. Although annual inflation slowed down to about 9.2% last month, we at Ecobank think that there could be a slightly weakening of the cedi in the months ahead due to the obvious extra spending prior to next week's election. In election years, what usually happens is there is a bit of fiscal indiscipline. Fiscal slippage comes into play. We've seen a bit this year, and that really negatively impacted the cedi. Now there's been some stabilization, but with a liquidity overhang as a result of the extra spending, I guess there could be some slight weakening of the cedi in the weeks and months ahead.
All right. Of course, just last week we saw S&P affirm Ghana's B+ rating. How was this received in the financial markets, in your view?
The rating wasn't changed. It was largely expected. It didn't really impact the market, it didn't impact the market in any way. And just like I was saying earlier, there's not much activity in the equity markets because of the elections. The same situation is not in Wole. You cannot say the same for the fixed income markets because of investors chasing yield. But it hasn't really impacted the markets, the financial markets in any way.
All right. So for asset managers looking for returns in Ghana right now, what's your call on the equity market, considering where yields are in the fixed income market? Going into next year, do you think the equity space is likely to do well, or do you think that many investors should continue to lock into the fairly attractive yields we're seeing in the fixed income market?
Well, you see, we are Ecobank Capital. If we were to do a fundamental valuation of equities on the market, a large chunk of them are fairly valued.
Right.
But in these parts of the world, it's not really much about the intrinsic value about these securities, but it's more about the sentiment of investors. In Ghana, as much as we think that equities are fairly valued, we are going to get pension trustees from the end of this month. We are going to get pension funds from corporate institutions, pension assets going to corporate trustees. This thing should have started in January 2010. There's been a hold, and it's now going to take off.
Right.
Now, there's a lack of investable instruments in these markets, and I think equities are just going to go up next year, irrespective of what we think intrinsic or relative valuation figures are.